So, why? Why bother with in-ears? Well, for musicians, the first big thing is that this means, in most cases, is you're going to get your own mix. Instead of having to share a floor monitor with everybody else in a limited number of mixes, you're going to be able to hear what you want to hear instead of having to make a compromise. It's hard to get 3 people to agree what goes on a pizza, much less what goes into their monitor mix. Second big thing is to protect your hearing, and that sounds kind of counterintuitive because we're putting loud things in our ears. But the idea there is if you're on a loud stage, you're standing in front of a drum kit and next to a guitar amplifier, that stage may be 100 decibels or more. It's a loud environment. And if you subject your ears to a loud environment like that all the time, it does cause hearing loss over time. Once you lose hearing in a particular frequency spectrum, it's gone. It's gone for good. It never comes back. Those cells, once they're dead, they never regrow in your ears. So all of us experience hearing loss as we get older. That's just part of growing up, I guess. But we don't want to accelerate that and lose our high frequency hearing sooner than we have to. So putting in-ear monitors in, the first job of an in-ear monitor is basically to act as an earplug. It takes that 100 decibel environment that you're in and knocks it down by 20, 24 decibels or more so that you can monitor and hear what you need to hear at a nice, comfortable level without having to be louder than the drum kit and the guitar amp and everything else that you're standing with. If you're a guitarist, this helps you get better tone. Why? Because you're hearing the sound that comes out of your amplifier instead of aiming that sound directly at your knees. I don't know if you know this, but we don't hear with our knees, we hear with our ears. And so taking that sound, putting a microphone in front of the amplifier and piping that sound into your ears lets you hear what that guitar amp is actually doing, rather than hearing the off-axis response that you're getting to your ears. And this is what we're here to talk about. It makes it possible to use click tracks and loops and backing tracks. You don't ever want to put a click track through a floor monitor because then everybody's going to hear your that's just the benefits for the musicians. For everybody else, this gives us the chance to reduce stage volume. If we can replace monitor wedges with tiny little in-ear monitors, we can reduce the overall stage volume, which means the congregation can hear better because now the PA system doesn't have to be louder than these floor monitors that are on the stage. We can reduce, or in a lot of cases, completely eliminate feedback altogether. Very, very cool. Feedback happens when a microphone picks up its own amplified signal, and floor wedges are one of the fastest ways for that to happen. We eliminate the wedges, we a lot of times can completely eliminate feedback. And by eliminating wedges, we can make the stage cleaner. That helps visually. It's also a safety thing. There's less wires and things to trip over going across the platform. So it just helps clean things up, both in the audio and the visual spectrum. Wedges versus in-ears. Now with wedges, the job of the monitor wedge is to give the musician only the things that they don't already have access to, what they can't already hear. If you're standing on stage in front of a drum kit, guess what? You can hear the drum kit. It doesn't have to be in your monitor. So we only need to fill in what's missing. Also, multiple people are probably going to share a mix. That's usually by necessity because the floor monitor is covering a pretty wide swath of the stage. Unless you've got everybody standing 20 feet apart, you're going to have multiple people that hear the same monitor, so they have to share a monitor mix. In-ears, if you don't have it in your ears, then you don't have it. The drum kit that's 10 feet over there, it still needs to be in your ears because remember we put these earplugs in. So it's not just giving you what's missing, it's giving you everything. And each person now needs their own mix because what I need to hear as a vocalist is very different from what somebody else needs to hear, even if they're a vocalist. They need to hear their voice, I need to hear my voice. Wired, by the way, stop me guys if you want to throw anything in, I'm just trying to get through a bunch of stuff fast. Wired versus wireless. There are wired in-ear monitors, and they are a perfectly fine and valid way to go. If you've got a drummer who's not moving, there's no reason to give that drummer a wireless in-ear system. That's just extra expense. It's one more thing that can break. A wired in-ear monitor is fine for somebody who doesn't have a need to move around the platform. So the way this works is there's a cable running across the stage. It goes to a belt pack. That belt pack has a volume knob of some kind on it, maybe a balance knob, and that controls what's going into their in-ears. That's usually the lowest cost option. Just like with microphones, it's always the most reliable option too. The best Most expensive wireless in-ear system is still going to be less reliable than a cable, $25 cable. And like I said, keyboard players, bass players, drummers, anybody that's not moving around a bunch, it's fine, perfectly acceptable. Wireless, we've got a transmitter that sits in a rack somewhere that broadcasts a signal to a belt pack. Receiver, same kind of thing. We got a volume knob and some controls on there for them to control what goes into their ears. That's always going to be more expensive. It's going to be less reliable, but it does eliminate some wires, and it gives that person the ability to move around the room if they need to. They're not tethered by a cable. Cost concerns, the cheapest way to do monitoring on any stage, if we're starting from scratch, is going to be wired in-ears. Wired in-ears are cheaper than wedges. Wireless in-ears, always the most expensive option. Sometimes it's the best option, but always going to be the most expensive. Then there comes the question of how to create a mix. If every musician now needs their own monitor mix, who's going to be responsible for making that? And we basically have two choices. We can let the musicians do it themselves, or we can have an engineer do it for them. Each one comes with its own pros and cons. So musicians are not born great mix engineers. They sometimes struggle to craft a mix. Even if they've been doing this for a while and they kind of know what they want, when it comes to actually making that mix, they're not necessarily going to be good at it at first. It's a skill that requires some time and some practice to acquire. I personally think that there is nobody who is better equipped to create a monitor mix than the person who is listening to that monitor mix, but they need the skill set to do it, and it takes some time to learn that. So don't expect we're going to give our musicians in-ear monitors and they're all going to have these great, perfect monitor mixes on day one, because they don't know how to do that yet.
If that monitor mix in their ears what they're hearing, not necessarily what's going on.
Right, it's just for them.
Yeah.
If it's in-ears, nobody else can hear that. We can give that job to an engineer. Here's the problem with that. If we're talking about the front of house engineer, that person's already busy. They've got a front of house mix to do, and their primary job is not to craft your beautiful, award-winning, radio quality monitor mix. Their job is to mix what the congregation is hearing, what's coming out of the main speakers. So anything else we ask them to do has to fall lower on the priority list than their main job. And they can't hear what you are hearing if you're the musician on stage. They're hearing what's coming out of the main speakers. That's what they should be listening to. So if we give this job to a dedicated engineer, a monitor engineer, have a front of house engineer is in charge of what the congregation hears. We have somebody over by the side of the platform. That's the monitor engineer. They're in charge of mixing it for the band. That person hopefully is going to be better able to craft that mix for them, because they're not also concerned with the front of house mix. But they can only hear one thing at a time. If they're listening to the worship leaders in-ear monitor, they can't hear what the bass player hears, and if they're listening to what the bass player's monitor is, they can't hear what the lead guitarist hears, and so on. So they're always going to be limited to mixing one thing at a time. And you see a lot of this, like looking over the shoulder, and I need this up, down, and turn that up. And you get very good as a monitor engineer at interpreting these weird hand signs and sideways glances and stuff. But in church settings, a lot of the time, we don't have the same people in the same roles every Sunday. And if that's the only chance you get, then you don't have time to learn that weird nonverbal language of what it means when my face looks like this, and the hand signs and stuff that a professional monitor engineer might have. So that makes it difficult. I don't know a lot of churches. There are some that do it well. I don't know a lot of churches that have a dedicated monitor engineer that does that job really well. Usually what we end up with is the musicians creating their own mix. How do they do it? A couple different ways. There's systems like Avion. Behringer has the P16 system. Most digital mixers have some kind of personal monitor mixer. Little guy that big, mounts on a microphone stand. And each person has one so they can craft their own mix right there. If you don't have that, what I do in my band, we've got a digital mixer that has an iPhone app And everybody in the band just downloads that app, and we give them access to control their monitor mix. And their app controls their mix and only their mix. They can't accidentally screw up somebody else's mix. Now, there's a limit to the number of devices you can have. There's a limit to the number of monitor mixes you can run if you're doing it that way. So in most cases, the better way is to have personal monitor mixes, but that raises the cost a little bit. If we have an engineer do it, they're either going to do it on the front of house mixer by using the auxiliary sends of that mixer, or we have a dedicated monitor mixer over by the side of the stage. You guys have anything to add? Okay. I have, this question comes up a lot, especially from churches when they're starting with in-ear monitors. Everybody's got a pair of earbuds, probably came with their phone. Can we just have people use that? So those are cheap, right? It start at like $5 if you buy them on sale at Target during back-to-school sales. Is that good enough, or should we invest in some professional in-ear monitors? I'll tell you, my in-ear monitors that I use personally, I spent about $800 on them, and I'm a person who's spent an embarrassing amount of money on audio equipment over the years. That is the single best investment I've ever made. Getting really, really good in-ears that fit me in my ears well and sound great and give me what I need to hear. That completely changed my world as a vocalist when I got really good in-ear monitors and I could hear what I needed to hear. So I would always recommend absolutely get the best you can afford, whatever that means for you.
Does everybody have to have the same brand?
No. In fact, most people don't. Everyone has, it's like guitars, everybody has an opinion.
Right. And I really like mine, but I wouldn't recommend those for everybody. In fact, you can't even get them anymore.
Are there any of the in-ear monitors nowadays that work like the shots, off the bone conduction hearing instead of,
They do, the problem is they don't get loud enough most of the time, but they do work well.
Okay.
They certainly do, and they do bypass, if you happen to have extensive high frequency hearing loss, they bypass that path, so you can restore that.
Okay.
What if you're in a situation where money is an issue and not everyone can, like we can't afford a set for everyone? If I work with youth, so if some of my kids have AirPods, would that work?
I mean, it
versus a $99?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever they can afford, obviously. A lot of times, like, the churches, those on the team who can't afford to buy their own, they get them, and then we'll often say, instead of buying a $300 set, if you bought a $100 set for you, could you spend the other $200 on gifting that to someone else?
I could say no and want my $800.
Right, yeah.
But if you're like
That's the worship
comparing,
leader's job.
if you're comparing like a $99,
Right.
your in-ear versus an AirPod, which is
What you're getting is the quality of the build.
Yeah.
So like on those $99 ones that he has on the screen there a second ago, if the cable breaks, you can replace it.
Right.
Things like that. Whereas an AirPod, once it's gone, it's a consumer product to buy it again.
So
The earpads can be adjusted. They're small, large.
when Apple designed the consumer earbuds, the ones that are included with an iPhone when you buy them, they actually did a really good job designing them for what they intended people to use them for. They're focused on the voice range, the telephone range, 300 hertz and 3K. They're not too concerned with extreme low frequencies or extreme high frequencies because they were all about vocal intelligibility. There's very little headroom in them, which means if you turn them up loud, they distort. A good in-ear monitor, you can turn it up loud and it doesn't distort. That's when you hear distortion, your brain interprets that as being painful and being too loud. Even if it's not necessarily loud, if it sounds distorted, then it sounds bad and it hurts. So again, more distortion, that means it's worse for your hearing. They're actually specifically designed to not seal well. They want you, if you're going for a jog and listening to music on your iPhone, they want you to be able to hear the world around you. If a car is coming at you, they want you to hear that, so they allow outside noise to come in. We don't want that with in-ear monitors. We want the opposite. They need to seal and block out the outside sound. Otherwise, if you're on that 100 decibel stage, the monitors will now need to be louder than your surrounding environment for you to hear them. So you got to push these things to 106, 110 decibels to be louder than your stage. And in-ear monitor should reduce the volume, not raise the volume. And so that is the perfect recipe for hearing damage. If you've got something that distorts when you turn it up, and you have to turn it up to hear, you are pushing your ears closer and closer to hearing loss. And so that's the whole thing with professional earbuds is that they're designed to be full range, as close as we can get anyway, to 20 hertz to 20K, with low distortion, lots of headroom, and they seal and block out the outside noise. That is especially important if you're on a loud stage. And I'll tell you, not everybody's on a loud stage. So like in my world, I sing in an a cappella group and we're not loud. We don't have a drum kit, we don't have guitar amps. So I didn't need mine to seal really well. So my really nice in-ear monitors only give me about 16 decibels of isolation rather than the 20 or 25 that I get from truly sealed professional in-ear monitors. But that's because I don't have to worry about a loud stage. Yeah.
Sorry to ask.
Yeah. No, you're good.
I'm just trying to
That's what we're
understand. So like the AirPods, like AirPods Pro, right? Are you saying like the Pro earbuds are gonna be a better, even if it's cheaper than the AirPods, it's gonna be a better option than like the top of the line AirPods?
I'll tell you, it's like you can see my PowerPoint presentation. You're asking the questions in all the right order.
Sorry.
But no, because the AirPods are designed, they're designed to emphasize, they're designed to sound good.
Okay.
That they're a consumer product, so.
So I'm better off with the 99.
Right, because they're much more
Okay.
linear, they give you a truer picture.
And the other thing about AirPod Pros and all wireless earbuds for that matter, they use Bluetooth technology. And Bluetooth, it has an inherent delay built into it. 10, 20 milliseconds, or sometimes a lot more than that, depending on how they implement Bluetooth. And that's not a big deal if you're listening to podcasts or even if you're having a phone conversation with somebody. 20 milliseconds is the amount of time that it takes sound to travel across this room 20 feet. So it's really not that big a deal. But if you are using those as in-ear monitors, you're a singer, you've got your own voice that you hear through bone conduction in your ears, and you've got another copy of that voice coming back at you 20 milliseconds later, man, that is really disturbing, and it sounds awfully weird. So Bluetooth doesn't work well for professional audio applications. Not a thing in the world wrong with it for listening to music or all the other things you use Bluetooth for. It just doesn't work in this particular application. So yeah, you'd be better off with wired $99 earbuds than you would $300 AirPod Pros. Now, a lot of the time, this is especially true in worship teams, when we move away from wedges and into in-ear monitors, we get a lot of resistance, especially in the beginning. And why is that? Is it because musicians are dumb and they don't understand what they want? No, it's because this is a big change from the way we are used to hearing to working a completely different way. A lot of people are going to feel isolated. They're going to feel cut off. I can't hear the room anymore. I can't hear the band anymore. I can't hear all the things I'm used to hearing. That's a totally legitimate, very valid concern, and it feels very weird when you put these things in your ears and you can't hear the things that you're used to hearing. A lot of them are unable to get a good monitor mix, again, because nobody's born knowing how to mix. I need to hear these things, and I don't know how to make my monitor mix work right. And a lot of them are either embarrassed or sometimes unsure of how to ask for what they need or want. And a lot of people, I've been playing music this way for 20 years, and I don't want it to change. I'm not a big fan of change. All those things are totally valid, I get them. And if we just get everybody in-ear monitors, and we take away the wedges, just expect a train wreck to happen. You cannot expect them to just get it. It's going to take time and practice and training, and they have to ease into this. We can't just do it all in 1 week. What about pulling out one ear? I see people do this all the time. I have been guilty of it myself. Can I just pull out one ear? It is an instinct for a lot of people because I feel cut off from the room. I want to hear the things I'm used to hearing. And if I take one ear out, now I can hear the things that I'm used to hearing. So there's a couple problems with this. First of all, the physics of it are not in your favor, and the way God has designed your brain that isn't for monaural hearing, it's for binaural hearing. So what happens if I've got one ear monitor in and the other one is out? My brain is listening to what's coming in both ears, and it says, oh, okay, well, you've got some allergies or something going on in your left ear, So you're not hearing very well out of your left ear today. We're just gonna shift the image. So now everything that you hear in your right sounds like it's coming from the center. And that means I don't hear this left ear very well anymore. So I gotta turn up my in-ear monitors to compete with the room. And I've shifted everything to the center, and then, again, after I've done that for a little bit and things start to separate again, I hear the room out of this ear and I hear my monitor mix in this ear, my brain starts to compensate again. After a few minutes, I gotta turn it up again. And pretty soon, this ear that I've left in is just screaming loud in order to try to compete with the room. And that is the opposite of how in-ears are supposed to work, right? We want to make it a quieter listening environment, not a louder listening environment. So that can lead to hearing damage. That's why we always advise against that. If somebody's pulling out an ear, it probably means they can't hear what they need to hear to make music. Let's address that problem. Let's figure out what they need to hear and put that in their ears. Maybe it means we need to put an ambient microphone up in the room or on the stage so they get a little bit of that room sound back. Maybe it means that their mix is just a mess and we need to go in and help them craft a better mix so that they can hear what they need to hear to make music. When I coach the live sound engineers, what I tell them is no matter what the musicians tell you, if they say I need more of this, I need more of that, I need less of this, or whatever, I'll interpret that as them saying, I cannot hear what I need to hear to make music, will you please help me? And that's the problem we're going to try and solve. They can't hear what they need to hear, let's fix it. Not necessarily, I need more me in the monitors. Maybe you need more you, but why can't you hear yourself? Is it because the guitars are too loud? Is it because the ambient sound is too loud? Or is it really just that you're not loud enough? We can try to adjust their mix to give them what they need to hear.
So when we have that set up, when you're wearing both ears and you get X volume, when you pull one out, it drops by 6 dB, which is a very significant amount, so it's 1/4 power. So now you're 1/4 the power that you were. So we have a summation that the brain works off of with both ears closed. So the brain then knows what to look for. As Jeff said, when one is open and one is closed, then the brain gets confused as to, do you have a cold, what's wrong, why am I listening to this? And the brain does a temporal shift that shifts over to that open ear. Your compensation point is to turn it up by the 6 dB you lost. And over time, that's why you have all these rock musicians that are deaf in their left ear. They stood next to a very loud thing, or they did that. And I've worked with so many of them that they've created an out of balance mix to compensate them. And it's really tough.
Yeah. Plus, one of the great things about in-ear monitors is that we have a stereo field to work with. And if I'm using a floor monitor, everything's going to come from that one spot on the floor. But if I have a stereo mix, I can put my vocal here and the guitar here and the other vocalist here and the drums. I can pan wide left and right. And so it makes it easier to hear things when they're separated in space. If you take one ear out, then now you got a mono mix. You can't do that anymore. Everything's got to be coming from the same place.
Good question.
Yeah.
Can you hear the mix from, let's say, the keyboardist? Can you hear that, the mix that's being fed?
Yes, so that's what I mainly do, is
Okay.
I tour as a monitor engineer now, because you only do front house for so long. I want to be with the band, and so what I basically
They're more
do,
fun,
I've got a
yeah.
Q mix, right, a Q mix C, and I've got a Q mix, and I can listen. So at First Special, I mix 14 wireless in-ear stereo systems, 4 wedge mixes, and then 4 Avion separate mixes. And so I can just scroll through. So I know that Matt Slim, the worship pastor, I know what he wants to hear. So as we're getting going, I dial that in, then I flip over. I wear one ear in and one ear on comm. And I flip over to Allie, whoever's singing soprano that morning, go through that, and then I'll go through and listen to the choir fold back through my ears, and how much of the keyboard needs to be in there, how much of that, so I can hear everything, and I do it all off an iPad. So the nice thing is, once the worship team gets on deck, then I can go stand next to Jeff, and I can show Jeff, here's the mix, and he says, hey, can you bring the stacks down? I need a little more bass, and I'm doing that in real time, and I'm hearing those changes, so I know that I hear the changes, he's hearing the changes.
Okay. Are you able to save those mixes?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
right, so all those get saved as snapshots and scenes.
Okay.
So if you're ever doing this, you're making this transition, you're getting musicians to try out in-ear monitors. The first thing we need to do is education. Talk about all the stuff we just covered. Why is this a good idea for musicians? What's the benefits for them? But they're going to hear better, they're going to protect their ears, they're going to get a mix that is customized and exactly what they want to hear, not what the person next to them wants to hear. And then give them an ambient microphone. So you have a microphone on the stage that only goes to the ears, and it gives them a little bit of that room sound back. And we have to be careful, if we give them too much, then we're right back where we started. We put them in a loud monitoring environment. But having just a little bit of the congregation sound and the room sound in their ears can help a lot. And you know, we want to take time. It's going to be several rehearsals with the ears before we finally unplug the monitors and put them in the closet.
Because we had to do the transition when Dr. Stanley was there for In Touch. We couldn't have no one could be seen with ear monitors, no one could be seen with that. So we all had full ranges, no click, no anything. It's just all, we're winging this thing. And then when Dr. Stanley stepped down and Dr. George came in, we completely revamped the system and went with click and tracks. And so we're now running 122 inputs and 32 channels of stereo tracks. And it's complicated. It's a real beast. But it works because...
How many of you work on that board?
Oh, yeah, I've got many hours on those boards. But the beauty of it, so Cody McVeigh is our MD, he's a music director. And so Cody's wearing a headset mic that I have on a hard gate. So it's closed until he talks and opens up. So we're going through, are we going to do the reprise or not? You know, it used to be all panicked, like, do I go to the next scene? And now he just calls reprise, yes, no. Now everybody can hear him, it's dialed in, so all the vocals know, I know, the lighting guy knows, we're all on the same page.
It's not that.
And it's great, and it's great. And then, for instance, if someone is doing a lead and she's struggling, and then there's a way that we can alternate it down. So she said, I'm not going to hit that note at the end of this thing. So we alternate it down. So she just calls it low. That's all she needs to say. And it goes just, so when she steps back, I know she steps like this, I instantly mute her mic in the house, but it's now on. Then she brings it up, says low, I then unmute it, and it comes back. Everybody knows where to go down, not up.
Wow, what a system.
Yeah.
And so like I said, musicians are not born knowing this. We have to teach them. So that education is, how do we operate a belt pack? Just technology that's there. On some belt packs, it's real simple. Control a knob. Turn it this way, it gets louder. Turn it that way, it gets quieter. Other ones, there's a menu with all kinds of options, so we're going to walk them through the things that they need to know for that. Multiple ear tip sizes, so there's the in-ear monitor that goes in your ear, and then they have foam or rubber tips, and what fits in one person's ears doesn't fit in another person's ears. Or for me, what fits in my right ear doesn't fit in my left ear. And a lot of accepting the in-ear monitors is just a matter of getting the right fit, getting one that fits well. For me, I ended up getting custom in-ears because I've got so tired of this thing where my right ear is bigger than my left ear. Nothing really fits right, and it always felt like no matter what ear tip size I was using, I was constantly poking myself in the ear to try to get it to stay in place. Custom ear monitors fix that problem. They molded them for the size of my ear canal. But at least we want to give them the option of trying several different multiple tip sizes, so you can get a variety pack from most manufacturers that has a small, medium, and large, and just try one of these and let us know which one fits, and we'll keep a bunch of smalls or mediums or larges or one of each or whatever for you. And then whatever they're using to mix, the personal monitor mixer or the iPhone app or whatever, it's worth taking some time to doing a training session just on that. They may seem simple enough. If you're an audio engineer and you know what all those faders do, that may seem self-explanatory, but it's not. For people who have never used that kind of technology before, if they're really good at playing guitar, that doesn't mean that they understand what all these faders do on their iPad screen. So we need to walk them through it. And we've been using in-ear monitors with my band for 10 years now, and I'm still, from time to time, helping people that, remember, if you go to this and you push that button, that gets your ear, oh yeah, that's right, I forget that. And they'll fix their mix. How to mix. This is what I start off with all musicians. We start off with your own voice or your instrument. That's going to be center, it's going to probably be the loudest thing in your mix. The next thing you need is a pitch reference and a timing reference. I need to be in the right key, I need to be in tune, and I need to be in time. That pitch reference could be a complementary instrument, it could be keys, guitar, whatever, and then that timing reference could be a click track, or it could be the drummer's mix or something like that. Then we're going to add complementary parts. If I'm a vocalist, that's going to be the other vocals. If I'm a guitarist, that's the other guitars. and then everything else should be the lowest thing in the mix. And that usually gets us close enough where people can start dialing the mix in and crafting something that works well for them. And help them remember that the whole point of this mix is not to give them a stunning radio quality mix that sounds great and it's everything that the people in the congregation are hearing. The point of this mix is to let them hear the things that they need to hear to make music. It's probably not everything the congregation hears. It could be vocals, click track, guitar, and one or two other things, and that's it. If that's what they need to make music, then great. That's what I just said. Okay. Subtractive mixing versus additive mixing. Additive mixing is, I can't hear something, I better turn it up. Subtractive mixing is, I can't hear something, I better turn other things down. Subtractive mixing is what I try to teach musicians to do. If you can't hear something, figure out what it is that's in the way. Why can't you hear it? And turn that thing down, rather than always reaching to turn something up. Pretty soon, if you just turn things up, you're going to end up with a mix that's pink. Everything's up all the time, and you don't hear what you need to hear. If you've not done this before, listen to what some other people's in-ear mixes sound like. You can find in-ear mixes on YouTube. We did a session a while back with Chris Tomlin's band, where we just listened to their in-ear mixes, listen to the click track that's happening, the talkback mics that are happening, and you can hear that in a video that we posted on the YouTube. You can go to sweetwater.com/worship and search for Chris Tomlin in-ear mix. Or you can search for it on YouTube. It's a lot easier to find on our website. All right, all that out of the way. You want to tell us about how you use tracks and why you use tracks and when you use tracks?
That's great. He just said tracks, but we're going to go 2 steps back. So if you've ever been to an orchestra concert, you know that there is a conductor standing in front of the whole band. And the first thing that conductor does is what? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It sets tempo. And then even though the entire orchestra, every instrumentalist has music in front of them, and they know exactly where they're going, you're going to go through the song just like it's on the sheet music, that conductor, the entire time, or director, whatever you want to call him, what he does, or she does the whole time, is keeps tempo that whole time. Well, in a lot of churches, there was an orchestra conductor on stage, and every song would keep tempo. But now, a lot of times in churches in 2025, a lot of times the entire praise team, whether that be the worship pastor in a band or the worship pastor orchestra, a lot of times now everyone is facing the congregation. So there's now no longer somebody, doing the whatever that's called. What's that called?
Conducting.
No, is it a baton? That didn't sound right. Awesome, baton. Okay, well that baton now no longer exists. So in all of this, all the great things about in-ear monitors for stage volume, for protecting your hearing, all those things, I would say one of the greatest things as worship pastors that we gain from in-ear monitors is the ability to use a click. So even before we talk about tracks, there is nothing, I think, as a musician more like, whenever the pianist hits a C chord and the guitarist is a little bit late and your drummer's a little bit late on that hit, or the vocalist doesn't quite come in on time. And what's beautiful about wearing in-ear monitors is you can have a metronome play. And so even before we get into all the wild world of tracks, the beautiful thing about in-ear monitors is the ability to run a click. Even if that's an unaccented click, so even if that was a constant click the whole time, even if the band got off click, that constant click, you can just find a new one on that click and just keep playing. And so I'm going to play you some audio just quickly here for a second. And so
You want to plug in? Switch to airplane?
Yeah, sure. I can show you.
But maybe we'd all have in-ear monitors.
There we go, yeah, I brought in your monitors for all of you. True at 114, see if I can kick you off. It's currently in use. Now there we go, Jeff, get off! Apple is incredible. They've taken all of our money, but they're incredible. Okay, 7665. Awesome, and let's do the entire screen. Here we go. So this is a software called Ableton. I'm not going to zoom out for right now. But right now, if I mute this pad right here, I don't know what volume we're going to hear. We might, I don't know if there's speakers in here. There are speakers in here. Cool. Let's see if we can get audio. We might not be able to.
Might have to sign it and sound it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, let's see.
Oh, there's the 3.5
Yeah,
there.
let's see, sound through. I'm just gonna do this. We're just gonna hear them through my speakers right now, and that's gonna be great, because you guys don't need to hear a lot. So, this is a click. And there's an accent there, so listen closely. Okay, and so that right there is at 86 BPM, and we were singing the song Promises in 6/8. But if nothing else, in-ear monitors allow you to play with a click track, and that allows the whole band to be on the same tempo. So that's step one. Well, I'd say step, yeah, go ahead.
What do you do if there's a retard?
It's great. So you can build all of those things in if you use things like Ableton or Playback, and we'll talk about that in a second. Or the great thing is that if there's a retard towards the end, we could easily just mute the click track for that moment or for the end of that song. That's a great question though. And so what I tell people all the time when I teach classes on tracks, 90% of what we do when we talk about tracks is playing with a click. Whether or not there's any instrumentation attached to that click really doesn't matter for the team. What matters is that we're playing to a click so that the whole team stays unified. Just like a whole orchestra has to stay unified with the conductor, the way that we're going to put out the most distraction-free worship for our congregation is that we can be all unified and together as a team. The second thing, we're not even going to touch tracks yet, the second thing that can help a team so much beyond track, beyond click, is then going to be cues, which is going to be a guide. And so, I don't know how your church operates, but a lot of churches will have some kind of a midweek rehearsal, and if you practice a song and you're using floor wedges, you are going to have to talk about an arrangement. And you're going to say, all right, we're going to do verse 1, and then remember, we're going to do an extra measure coming out of verse 1 before we go into the chorus. And then wait, are we going to do a double chorus there? And we've all had this conversation where we went over this on Thursday, and then we show up on Sunday morning, and we've all slept 3 times since then, and all of a sudden everybody seems to have forgotten. And if someone is the leader, we've forgotten what we decided on Thursday. Well, the great thing about cues using in-ear monitors is we can actually build and save a voice that is going to guide us through the song. Remember, we still have not talked about tracks yet. We're not talking about any kind of supplemental sound. And so if I zoom out a little bit, we're looking at the song Promises. We have our click track, but then you're going to hear, again, it's just through my speakers, but you're going to hear, we call her Pamela, is what we call her at our church. But Pamela is going to count the band in. Let me mute everything else. So that all you're going to hear now is Pamela and click.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And now the whole band is playing. She's going to call intro again.
Intro.
4, 5, 6. Dun, 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 dun. Here comes the verse. Sing verse 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. God of Abraham, and the God of covenant. And now she is guiding us through the song. So it doesn't matter how many times people slept or if somebody missed rehearsal, because we're using in-ear monitors. This might feel like karaoke, but I would argue it's glorifying the Lord because we're putting out an excellent distraction-free situation for our church to be able to worship to. And as worship leaders, if you're a worship pastor in the room, you're not having to do the whole thing where you've got hand signs of, are we going to the chorus or the verse or the bridge or whatever hand signs we are, stomping your foot or whatever you do as a worship leader. We can prepare well, build all of those things in. And then, and the church has no idea. All they're focusing on are what words we're singing to the Lord. And so all of those things are kind of the groundwork that go into tracks. And so if you get your church on, if you're thinking about what's a practical takeaway from the Alleluia 4 p.m. Tuesday session, if you could get your church, step 1, in the next 2 months wearing in-ear monitors. That's like step 1. Now we're all using in-ears because we can't put that through a floor wedge because then the whole church is going to hear it and that's going to be super distracting. But once we're using in-ears, we can now start with just a click, where we're going to do the same chorus and we're gonna memorize our arrangement, but at least we're all gonna be on time. And then once your church is used to that, we can introduce a guide to stay all on. We can build in retards, we can do all of these different things. And then, once the church has mastered, once the worship team has mastered that, if you feel that there is a void in the sound that you are producing as a band, maybe that is your electric guitar player called in sick, and you really want to have that electric guitar part in there. Or maybe not, it's not that your keys player called in sick, but your keys player is more of a chord player, but you're playing a song that has a cool, or not cool, but a nice piano line, and your keys player, you want to equip them and empower them for service in the church, but maybe they're not quite at the skill level yet to be able to nail that line, and you don't want to put them in a bad spot where they're going to embarrass themselves or distract the church from worship. You can actually put that piano part in tracks, but because you're already playing with click and you're already playing with guide, you're going to be playing perfectly in time. And so now, if I go ahead and start unmuting some of these tracks in here, if we go ahead in this song and we go to the chorus of Promises, you're going to hear so now we're adding some choir tracks in there because it's just going to fill out the vocal sound so the church feels more comfortable to sing because they hear voices that they can sing with. There was a tambourine shaker in there. My church, we don't have a percussion section. So it's nice to be able to have a tambourine that kind of just helps the church stay on tempo even if the drummer is doing a more spaced out drum beat. And so that's pretty much all that we've added in, but all of those are just tiny supplemental sounds, but all of that is kind of made possible through the foundation of in-ear monitors, click track, and a guide track.
How long does it take to build it?
It's a great question. So I want to start here because yes, this is what I do. This is a software called Ableton. I think 0.4 churches in America should be doing this. It's incredibly powerful and it can do incredible things. However,
it used to be the only way.
It used to be the only way. But there's a company called Multitracks that came out with a software called Playback. This has nothing to do with Sweetwater. This is just a worship pastor telling, Sweetwater doesn't sell Multitracks. So Multitracks is a website geared towards click track, guide track, and tracks in worship. And they have an iPad app. You can also run it on a computer, but they have an iPad app called Playback. And so I'm going to zoom in right here. I don't actually have it because I use Ableton. But if you look right here, and if I kind of swipe between, so that's Playback, and then this is my Ableton project, okay? If you actually kind of think about it, they're actually kind of similar. We've got an intro section, and verse 1. We've got guide, drums that we could turn up or down, percussion that we could turn up or down, loops. Let's say you have a bass player. Well, I don't need the bass track. I could turn that all the way down. Let's say, oh my goodness, we got off track. Well, I can jump up and hit that button, and that fades all the tracks out. And so the Playback app is an incredible app resource, and what's great about it is it's on a subscription. You don't have to buy all the tracks up front. So I have I've been doing this for many years, so I have a hard drive that I have purchased hundreds and probably thousands of dollars worth of tracks, and every single, so here's Death Was Arrested, I've got all of the individual stems for that song. Well, that's a big investment. What's great about the Playback app is you can pay, I don't know, it might be $30 a month or something, and you get access to unlimited songs. Now, you have to play within the Playback world, but again, for 99.8% of situations, the Playback world is perfect. The Playback world is super cool. You can also do things like you can control ProPresenter to make sure that your ProPresenter lyrics are always in line. Wherever you go, your ProPresenter goes. It can also control your lights. If you want your lights to follow the play, Multitracks has done an incredible job. They have incredible tutorials. So if you're like, Jordan, all this sounds like rocket science, they have They have videos for people just like us, worship pastors who aren't trained in this, on how to make this accessible both to your volunteers, to you as a worship pastor, to your tech team, how to route click just to your ears, not to the church. Like, they talk about all that. Also, you'll see a really cool feature that they did. Let's say we've all been in a situation where you're giving the welcome of, hey, good morning, welcome to church, and that intro just didn't seem long enough. Well, with the click of a button, you can hit the loop button, and you can just loop that section, and the guide voice will say intro again instead of saying verse, so your team knows to go to the intro again. So playback is a huge thing that I would put before you. And then, so now we've gone click, we've gone guide, we've introduced some tracks, and then I'm going to get back to what Kent was saying earlier. So my role at my church is I'm the music director, the MD. And so I would say the fourth stage of all of this is a role like mine. The guy you were talking about with Kent, who was able to say, reprise, go. And that went to everybody, but the church didn't hear. That's called the music director role. So that's what I do at Highland. So I run Ableton and run our tracks. But then what's great about that role is that I can talk into a microphone that only goes to the band and to the production team. And so I can change arrangements if something's happening. If someone's talking to the pastor, but the pastor's supposed to come up and do announcements, well, we need to add a song because someone is having a moment with the Lord with our pastor. And so I can say, while we're in the middle of one song, hey, Patrick, running Pro Presenter, can you pull in Goodness of God? And I'm going to say, hey, Jessica, we're going to go ahead and go into Goodness of God after this song. And I can now talk us through, even though we didn't practice it, I can talk us through Goodness of God. And the church has no idea that wasn't planned because lyrics were ready, Jessica was ready, and the band is playing the right chords. And so all of that's made possible because we're using in-ear monitors and not floor wedges. And so that is just a simple microphone set up on stage that is just routed to in-ears or routed to the production team. There's great ways to do that. We use something, if you're into taking notes, we use something called an Optigate, which is a infrared mic mute. I highly recommend it. It's about $200, but you guys don't know that. Diodario they copied them. Optigate did it first. Sweetwater sells a version of this, but basically what it is it clips onto the end of your microphone, and when I bring my face to the microphone to talk, it unmutes, and now it's open and I can talk, but as soon as I back away and I'm just making a joyful noise to the Lord that's totally off key, the band doesn't hear it. Or if you have a stage where you have a drum set, well, if I have a microphone 10 feet away from that drum set, that microphone is now just an extra overhead monitor, and like an overhead microphone. But the Optigate or the Diodario version, or you can do it with a gate on the soundboard. The problem is that sometimes you have to whisper into the microphone in a quiet moment, so the gate doesn't always work well. So this is called, again, it's an Optigate. If you want to take a photo of this, I highly recommend. I've got 3 of them. They just work really well. You can adjust the sensitivity, so if you like to talk right up on the microphone or a little bit back, if you have a music director role, this is a really, really powerful piece of equipment. Diodario also does have a version that Sweetwater sells.
Proximity?
It's all proximity.
Wireless too, or just
what?
Wireless?
This is just wired, so XLR in. It does take phantom power, so you can't use a phantom power mic with it, so you have to use a passive microphone. But highly recommend. But again, those are kind of 4 stages to think through. So the first thing, remember, in my opinion, 90% of the battle is click. If we can get our team used to running click, then we can talk about, do we have a problem with our band knowing the arrangement? If you are the type of worship pastor who makes a chord chart in the exact arrangement you're going to do, maybe you'd say click is enough for us. But if you run into that problem of your drummer not always remembering, are we doing an extra measure, how many intros were we doing, the second stage of guide might be a helpful thing. Then if your if your team masters that, then you might say, well, what supplemental sounds, not to be karaoke, we're not just pressing play and just singing along karaoke, what supplemental sounds could we add to enhance the worship And then I would say fourth would then be some kind of a music director role. But all of that becomes possible when you use in-ears. And really, if you think about it, I love ending all things with this. If I search up the sheet music to How Great Thou Art, this is what we were doing while I wasn't alive. But this is what we were doing 40 years ago, where everyone would just have sheet music in front of them. Well, really, that, I would argue, doesn't look all that different than this. All we've done is we've taken an arrangement of intro, that's not really the intro, but we've got a time signature, BPM. I don't know too many people who can just bust out 76 BPM just ready to go, and certainly not the whole team together. So we've introduced a click to take care of that, we've introduced an accent to take care of that, and then we've introduced a guide to remind us where we are in the song. But then beyond that, it's really hard for a choir conductor or an orchestra conductor to tell everybody, hey, we're going to go back to measure 72 because we need to add something. What's great about in-ear monitors is you can have somebody say, hey, we're going to go back to the chorus, and using softwares like Playback, we can just loop back into it. I know that was a fire hydrant. But
No, but a quick question though.
Uh-huh.
We talked earlier about the conductor
Yep.
having the baton.
Yep.
Do you have the click set up so that you get it pre-song?
So the way that I do it, it's a great question. So you can do this in Playback as well, but this is just, I don't have Playback pulled up, but all this is possible in Playback as well. So if you look right here, I've got my start right here, and so I can bring in this is, let's say, pre-service, so it's our first service starts at 8:40, so it's 8:39, the band's on stage. I'm going to go ahead and fire click so that our team is kind of already getting in. I saw some of you was already starting to count the 6/8 groove, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our band's kind of already feeling that groove, and now we're getting close to 8:40, and without even missing a beat, I can hit next. 1, 2, intro, 4, 5, 6, and we're in. Now you can hear, there's barely anything in the tracks right there, but we are all perfectly on time, and we're following that guide. And then let's say we weren't ready and I wanted to loop that section, I just go back,
First one.
and I tell the band intro again, and it looped back to the intro. And we can just endlessly loop that section. And again, Playback does all this. Ableton looks super confusing. Playback is a super user-friendly, it's on the app, it's all at the click of a button. So accessible, even if you consider yourself not very technical, the Playback app is what I would call a life hack for tracks in worship.
There's a free version of the Playback app.
Yep.
You can download it and play with all that stuff without having to pay anything.
Yep, and you can do click and pad for free, unlimited times in Playback. So if you just want to start with click and pad, you don't want to invest in anything, Playback is awesome for that.
And they also just last week came out with
They're new.
their new thing, which is they have you get a song from them. They have several different versions with several different genres of the same song. So you can have a gospel version, a contemporary version, and a urban hip hop version or whatever. You get all three of those, you get all the tracks, and you can combine them in any way you want. So your version of the song does not have to sound anything like the original artist's album version of the song. But a lot of them, they also have not just like karaoke or like somebody in a studio recreating the original tracks. They have purchased the original masters from the record label, so it's the original tracks you're getting. So it's very, very powerful and very flexible.
You can play in any key. You can change the key right in the Playback app. If you want to do a song slower or faster, you just swipe. Again, you can do it all in Ableton, but Playback has just taken a very powerful, confusing, hard to get into software and made it just the same Apple iOS that we're used to. Incredibly powerful. Change key, change tempo.
And all this is not just applicable for a praise team. So with us, we have 50-piece orchestra and 150 choir. And the way we do it is we send click to the orchestra through the Avion, little box mixers, and first chair listens to that. And then first chair defines it for that section. So only first chair is listening, but first chair to each section is listening. And in choir, I've got ringers at each position. So I've got 3 in soprano, 3 in alto, 3 in tenor, 3 in bass. And they're listening through a little inexpensive listen technology hard of hearing system. That's all they need to hear is a click and guide. And they're also a route conductor to that as well, NMD, so that they all hear that. And that way, choir and orchestra is completely seamless for all of this.
whole stages
Whole
together.
stages together, and it just transformed what we did. Because we could not put on most of the music we produced during Dr. Stanley's and Touch Days. The driver was Dr. Stanley's preaching. Now, and Dr. George is well gifted in preaching, but what drives us to have millions of viewers is the music. So it's become a standard, and the whole change has been Click and Guide enabled. It just changed the world.
But it all starts with in-ears,
Yeah.
and then it all starts with click. You gotta get those two things. That's really. Any questions from anything? We'll also be here to talk, but it's a fire hydrant of information.
Estimate, you got 6 people in the band, what's the cost? For a medium size,
But do they have to be wireless, or can they be wired?
you tell me. Yeah.
If they could be wired, the cost is 1/6. It just drops dramatically.
Yeah, we're not moving.
Right, so if they could just
I
be
would say the
wired.
vocalist,
Yeah.
like your worship leader,
Yeah.
should be wireless.
Right, if you,
I
take
get that one, but
yeah.
all our guitar people.
No, if their instrument's wired, they need to be wired.
A good pair of in-ear monitors and a decent wired belt pack is probably $200 per person.
That's
Uh,
150 or 200
Yeah.
per, from, if you, so this is not just for, what's that? Yeah, it's this guy right here, yeah. So what's great about this product, Sweetwater sells it, this is not just all a pitch for Sweetwater, but this is $40. And this takes an XLR, so what's cool about this is you think about, if you have monitors on your stage already, there's already an XLR going to that monitor. So if you don't know what an XLR is, that's okay, but the cable going from your soundboard to your speaker on the floor, this pack right here, if I scroll over, this takes, come on, show the back, Oh, it's not gonna show the back. Well, I promise you, the back of that has the same XLR input. And so the same way right now that your sound person is already like mixing that floor monitor, they can actually do the exact same thing. So I've seen churches where even the vocalist, I agree, wireless is great for the frontline vocalist, but even if your budget is really smart, where you're talking to youth ministry, for $40, you could give everyone one of these. This gives them their own volume. So everyone's got their own volume. They plug their headphones in. So AirPods, to your example, actually wouldn't work here because you actually do need a headphone jack. Sweetwater doesn't sell this, but just saying, if it's a youth ministry thing, there's a lot of people, seriously, there are a lot of people who do use these $20 in-ears, and if we're being honest, if we're talking about being good stewards, there is something to this. However, for many situations, it's the 215 is a industry standard. It's 90. You can find them on sale at Sweetwater, often for like $80. The Shure 215 is a complete staple. So that for $97 paired with this, and now the free playback app, you're running in-ears for $130 per station.
I've used those $45.
Yeah.
And they don't sound like the Shures, but they do isolate.
They
well.
isolate well. So that's a great question to know. This is not, we're not talking a tens of $1,000s overhaul to introduce this. This is a very accessible, and with things like playback or YouTube, there are lots of tutorials on YouTube about how to make, I guarantee that your mixing console at your church can do some kind of version of sending an aux send through an XLR that can plug into one of these. You don't know. Getting into the P16s and things, so I mean a P16 is Behringer's version, but let me, of course that was probably, one second. So yeah, again, this is if you have like an X32, but this gives you an example. This is on Sweetwater's website. But what's cool about this is that you can do a label maker where you tape a piece of paper here and you label channel 1 is click, channel 2 is guide, channel 3 is Gary's voice, channel 4 is Haley's voice, and you label what everything is. And then if somebody wants to turn click up, they click number 1 and they turn up the volume. And then they click number 4, they turn down 4. And so everyone can create their own mix. But one of those will cost you $299.
And that's the personal one?
That's the personal one, $299. Now, so every station would need one of those. So now we're kind of into like the second tier. But again, the whatever, I went off now. But this is kind of like the net, or 209 for each one of those. But again, now we're talking a little bit more at each.
Yeah, I followed you.
So anyway, that's we're getting into a little bit of the weeds now, but those are kind of some of the tiers that we get into. But it can all start with a simple, we just gotta convert that XLR signal to a headphone jack, which that $40 P1 can do very well. And the Lord can be glorified through a worship mix. The Lord can be glorified through no sound system. So we're just trying to give the church the most distraction-free, excellent worship environment to seek the Lord through. So.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.